Hello everybody and welcome to zlatanobojmtg. I must say it's great to be back on the channel, and we are kicking off here with a black and blue deck tech. This is my personal build. This is one I take to FNM. This is one I'm taking to Game Day tomorrow, which is going to be pretty interesting. It's sort of tailored to the meta game of my personal local game store, which is Shogun Games. Check them out in the description below. So there are, perhaps some things you wouldn't usually see being played in a build like this, but it is quite a mid-rangey sort of build. It has the control aspect that a usual blue-black deck would, but it's got more creatures than a usual build. Obviously, the other ones you'll see probably have an Icefall Regent or two, a Silumgar. We've seen a couple of those in the recent Pro Tours. But this deck's slightly different. So let's kick off with our creature base. We have at the top here as our 3-drops, which is our cheapest creature. We've got 3 Master of the Feast. Now this guy is just a great beater. 5/5 flyer. Obviously, as a control player, you don't particularly want your opponents drawing cards, but having that 5/5 body is really good, especially in the air, just to get through some damage. Obviously, at some point you have to try and kill your opponent. But also is really good with the next card we're going to be talking about. We know too much about Master Feast already. We don't have to really talk too much. He's just a great, cheap, efficient beater. Profaner of the Dead, a card I really like in this standard. I don't know whether it's going to see top tier standard play, but I really like it in my local FNM. It works really well because we have a lot of aggro decks, and Profaner of the Dead pretty much halts aggro decks and also ramp decks early game. If we get to turn 4, we might just exploit him. But let me just go through him quickly. He's a 3/3 for 4, which is 3 and 1 blue. He's a Naga wizard, so he has exploit. When Profaner of the Dead exploits a creature, return to their owner's hands all creatures your opponents control with toughness less than the exploited creature's toughness. So what essentially this allows me to do is perhaps play a Master of the Feasts, swing in for 5, and if I don't want to draw any more cards, I can exploit it with Profaner of the Dead the next turn to bounce pretty much their entire team, because at that point on turn 4, no one's really going to have toughness greater than 5. But Profaner of the Dead is just really nice to just bounce all those Raoul Masters, all those tokens that Raoul Master produces, all those Elvish Mystics and Carotids potentially. So this guy's really good. I did have him initially as a 3-off. I've dropped him down to a 2-off, simply for the fact of the next card. We have 3 Icefall Regents. This guy's an absolute monster. I mean, I'm even thinking about cutting a Prognostic Sphinx to add a 4th in. It's that good when I've played with him recently. He is a 4/3 flyer for 3 and 2 blue. He is, of course, a dragon. And when he enters the battlefield, you tap target creature an opponent controls, and that creature does not untap during its controller's untap step for as long as you control Icefall Regent. And also, it's going to be pretty hard to get rid of with spells, as the spells that target Icefall Regent cost 2 more to cast. Now, that makes even a Lightning Strike, which would deal with Icefall Regent, cost a total of 4 mana, which is like a pretty decent investment, and I don't mind them spending a turn's worth of mana, or potentially a turn's worth of mana, and a burn spell to get rid of an Icefall Regent, which is fine. The sleep thing coming in against pretty much any sort of deck. I mean, I've seen it when I've been playing down against an Ataka or Surak. This guy just keeps them under wraps, keeps them down. So Icefall Regent's great, and then can swing for 4 in the air, and is really hard to deal with. So I really like this guy. Next card is one of my favourites, but the more I play with it, the less I sort of... It's competing with Icefall Regent for the slot, and I'm playing 3 of each. Prognostic Sphinx, 3 and 2 blue, flyer for a 3/5, so slightly less attack than Icefall Regent, but 2 extra defense. You can discard a card, which gives it hexproof until the end of turn. You also have to tap Prognostic Sphinx to do so. And whenever it attacks you, scry 3. The scrying is the big reason this is in, because it sort of acts as a way to filter through things you don't need. So if, for example, you are looking for a removal spell, it's really nice just to be able to scry your way through your deck and be able to find that removal spell. Also, the discard ability is actually kind of good. Also, obviously, giving it hexproof is a great thing, but also it feeds your dig through times. If you're looking for some extra cards to make that dig through time delvable, and you've got cards in your hand that are dead cards, for example, you might have a Thoughtseize and they might not have a card in hand, you can just get rid of your Thoughtseize and bring out your dig through time, get the delved nice and cheap. So Prognostic Sphinx is pretty good for that. Also, it allows you to whip things back as well. So if you do have to discard a creature card, I am playing 1 Whip of Erebos in the main board, and I can potentially whip back the creatures you discard as Sphinx just to give him hexproof. So this guy's really useful, but it is that scry ability that makes him so good in my eyes. Potentially could drop him to a 2-of, bring in another Icefall Regent. Same with Profaner of the Dead, but we'll see. But the main reason I made this deck, guys, is because for the pre-release I managed to get this absolutely beautiful, and I will show you it up close, Dragon Lord Silumgar foil. This guy is simply gorgeous. As you can see, he is an absolute beauty. And probably one of my favourite cards I've ever got in Magic the Gathering. So, and black and blue are one of my favourite colour combinations anyway. But I mean, just getting that guy is such a boon to my collection. But this guy made me want to play black-blue control, or blue-black control, whichever way you want to say it. Blue-black's the correct way, but still. He's a 3/5 as well for 6 mana, so he's the highest end curve creature. He's 4, 1 blue and 1 black. He has flying and death touch is such a relevant ability, especially with the dragons elsewhere on the battlefield. However, you might be stealing one of those dragons, as when Silumgar enters the battlefield, gain control of target creature or planeswalker, as long as you control Dragon Lord Silumgar. Recently, in the Pro Tour, we saw a match between blue-black control with Silumgar at the high end of the creature base, stealing an Ataka, then the other player playing an Ataka, killing the Silumgar, having his Ataka back, triggering the legendary ability, so he got his Ataka. Next turn, Silumgar comes out and then retakes that Ataka, and that's game over. This guy is ridiculous. Whenever I play him, I'm never, ever disappointed. On the sideboard, I have the other version of Silumgar, which deals well with tokens. But this guy is just ridiculous. I'm never disappointed when I play him, and he's just a great blocker all day. He'll swing and people won't want to block because he's got death touch. And, taking control of things is pretty good indeed. I think for that simple sort of 6 mana for a 3/5 flying death touch, and you get to steal, potentially an Ugin, and also their best creature on the battlefield, that guy's pretty good. Let's move down to our spells though, which is where the main sort of meat of the deck lies. And there have been some recent changes to this spell base, which have helped it sort of go through the paces a bit better at FNM. Start off with 3 Thoughtseize. I'm not playing 4, I'm just playing the 3. Target player reveals his hand, you choose an online card from it, make that player discard the card and you lose 2 life. Really nice first turn just to get a threat out of their hand, but I tend to sort of go nowadays, after watching a lot more of the Pro Tours recently, don't always go for the big threat. If you see a Silumgar in someone's hand, don't discard the Silumgar, don't discard the Ataka, get rid of the Carotid. Get rid of something early on that's going to give them a chance to accelerate and get ahead of you. I find it to be a lot better course of action. So Thoughtseize as a 3 of, because I don't always need them and I prefer to have more removal and card draw and counter spells and dig through times. We'll get to it, but I find a 3 of as a Thoughtseize pretty fine. We've got 2 Signing Bloods. Simple, effective, draw 2 cards, lose 2 life. That is completely fine. I'm fine with losing life because a lot of the time I'll be able to stop them from hitting me, so I can use the life as an extra resource for myself. So drawing 2 cards for 2 life is completely fine. Ultimate price, we have a 3 of this. Sort of came in initially, it was on the sideboard, but our meta's sort of changed recently. Initially, Drown in Sorrow was a 3 of in the main board because of the amount of Rabble Master we were seeing at our local FNM. But Ultimate price has come in now because we're seeing a lot more sort of Gruul builds, a lot more Abzan builds that are playing on the sorts of Surat Dragon Callers and your Pelucranoses, etc. And also Whisperwood Elemental is quite big at the moment, so Ultimate price is a good way to deal with that and a little cheaper than Hero's Downfall. Of course, it's monocoloured creatures, but there are a lot of monocoloured creatures knocking around. As you can see in this deck, we are only running 1 multicoloured creature. And we have a 1 of, a Damnable Pact. Now, it was my dream when making this deck that this would at some point kill someone. 2 weeks ago at FNM, it did. I cast Damnable Pact as X as 9 mana and managed to kill someone. I asked him if he wanted to draw some cards. He said, yeah, that'd be a great idea. And I said, okay, here you go, Damnable Pact. And ended up killing him that way. That game was absolutely amazing. One of my favourite games of Magic I think I've ever played, actually, against my good friend Matt. So that was a really, really good time. But Damnable Pact is just a 1 of. It's nice late game if you're desperately in need of an answer. It's great to just potentially draw into some removal you might need, or a dig through time just to get more options, or a creature you might need to block something with, an Icefall Regent or Dragon Lord. It's really good. Early game as well, turn 4, turn 3 if you've got nothing to do, even just pay 1 life and draw a card. It's fine. It's a good card. Just as a 1 of, if it shows up, it's good. I do quite like my spicy 1 offs. A card we are not playing 1 of is, of course, Hero's Downfall. We have a playset of Hero's Downfall. There are a lot of decks that run Planeswalkers at my local FNM. Otherwise, I probably won 1 more Ultimate price and 1 less Downfall. However, destroying a target creature at instant speed, or a Planeswalker at instant speed, for 3 mana is a pretty good deal. And we all know how good Hero's Downfall is. So moving on to our more interesting spell here, we've got the Hero's Downfall, which is very simple. We've got Monastery Siege, we've got those are two of. Both modes of Monastery Siege, of course the sieges having two modes each, are very, very useful. Being able to loot the first ability, which is, I believe, Khans, is that correct? Let me have a look here, guys, actually. Yeah, so we've got Khans at the beginning of your draw step, we draw an additional card, and then discard a card, and then Dragons, spells your opponents cast that target you or a permanent you control, cost 2 more to cast. So it basically makes all of your creatures and you into Icefall regents, which is really, really good. Great against burn. So anything playing red or anything with a lot of removal spells. So if you're playing in a mirror match here with a lot of removal, Monastery Siege really does come in handy. It's a very, very nice card, and if you've got an Icefall regent out, it then costs 4 more to cast to get rid of it. But the looting ability is fantastic. I found that a really, really useful way just to get the right things, and also, again, feeding your dig-through times. It's always important to remember that nowadays your graveyard's a resource. Don't waste it. 3 dissolves on the main board. Dissolve I really like. I'm thinking about potentially having a go with Silumgar Scorn, but Dissolve seems to be doing its job very, very well indeed. I have one of the really, really pretty promos there, which is really nice. And then finally, guys, for our spells, before we move on to our artifacts, planeswalkers, and land, is 3 copies of Dig Through Time. Now, a lot of people saying 3 copies is perhaps a bit too much whenever I've sort of played with this deck. I've never found that to be the case. Initially, I ran 3 Treasure Cruise. Dig Through Time is a lot better than Treasure Cruise, in my opinion. This has changed, actually, and there'll be someone who I know very well now at FNM called James, who I argued the toss between, saying Treasure Cruise is better than Dig Through Time, and I actually agree with him now that Dig Through Time is a better card. Looking through the top 7 cards and getting the best 2 is a lot better than getting 3 you might not want. Even with your Prognostic Sphinx potentially scrying you the cards you might need, and, you know, your Temples doing that as well, it's not as good as Dig Through Time. Dig Through Time can be, you know, as cheap, potentially, as Treasure Cruise. Not quite as cheap, obviously, with the 2 blue, but has that potential to be a very cheap spell. And a lot of the time with Prognostic Sphinx making, you know, discarding cards and giving hexproof, all the spells we're going to be using early game to keep ourselves in it and to keep the control aspect going. Dig Through Time is going to go off for 2 blue at some point in the game, there is no doubt about that, and then getting the best 2 things you need at that point. That's the thing, out of 7 cards, you basically get to choose the best 2 turns out of 7. That's essentially what it's doing. So Dig Through Time is great. So there's our creatures, there's our spells. Let's go and have a look at our land, artifacts, and planeswalkers. Okay guys, so we're now looking at our planeswalkers, artifacts, and lands. We'll start off at the bottom with our artifacts and our planeswalkers. We have 1 copy of Whip of Erebos. I'm potentially going to move this up to a 2, maybe 1 in the sideboard. It just works whenever it comes out for me. It's fantastic. My 4-drops are quite low, with Profaner of the Dead being the only natural 4-drop in the deck, and you know, other than that, Whip of Erebos is the only 4-drop. It works, it's fantastic. If you're behind, it gives you life, you can whip back those creatures people managed to remove, or you've discarded with Prognostic Sphinx to give it hexproof. It's just really good value all the time. You know, if people manage to get rid of your Silumgar, you whip it back, steal their creature till the end of turn, potentially do something with it, and also attack with the Silumgar, gain you 3 life. It's a really, really nice thing. So alongside Whip, guys, we have Ashiok, Nightmare Weaver. Another one of, when he shows up, he does work, but I don't always need him to. He's a 3 loyalty planeswalker for 1 blue and 1 black. So he's +2, we all know what it does, exile the top 3 cards of target opponent's library. Obviously this starts to feed his -X, where you can put a creature with converted mana cost X, exiled with Ashiok, onto the battlefield under your control. Remember though guys, if you manage to replay an Ashiok, so say you have 2 in your deck, do separate the exiled piles by Ashiok, because your first Ashiok's exile pile is different to your second Ashiok's exile pile. Do remember that. -10, exile all cards from opponent's hand and graveyard. Never really gets to that point. The main 2 you're going to be wanting to be using is the +2 to stop them having options, and the -X to get creatures onto the battlefield. This is very, very good against creature decks. I do like this in my meta because it steals a lot of Rabble Masters, and Rabble Masters are quite a difficult thing to deal with, as you guys know. So getting a Rabble Master or 2 is never bad. Let's move on to our lands. We'll start over here with Haven of the Spirit Dragon. Tap to add 1 to your mana pool, or tap to add 1 to your mana pool of any colour, and spend it only to cast a dragon creature spell. We have a few dragons, we've got 3 Icefall Regents, and 2 Silumgar, that's why this is in here. And you can sacrifice Haven of the Spirit Dragon to return target dragon creature or Ugin Planeswalker from your graveyard to your hand is just nice if you want to get a Silumgar back, and if you want to get an Icefall Regent back. It's as simple as that. And for the cost of 2 to be able to do that, that's pretty good value. I did at one point have an Ugin in the sideboard against other control decks. Ugin's very nice at some point to come out, but you know, he's mainly there for Icefall Regents and Dragonlord. 2 copies of Urborg, Tomb of Yawgmoth. Making each land swamp is just a nice effect. It potentially gives me 2 extra sources of swamp mana anyway, but also makes all those islands into tappable land for your black sources. So it's nice for that. I don't ever seem to be worrying about blue sources as much as I am black, which is weird because I think there's slightly more blue sources, but I always seem to get more blue. But do remember, it's each land, including your opponent. So if you're playing a black deck that is running low on black sources and you think you've got them on the ropes because they can't play black spells, don't play an Urborg. Play another land. Don't allow them to have black mana if they're needing it and they haven't got it. I've done that a few times and it has cost me games. So guys, let's move on to Temple of Deceit. Enters the battlefield tapped, can scry 1 when you come in, which is a really, really good ability, as we know, and tap for blue and black. When the Temples came out, people thought they were really bad. I genuinely think they're amazing. I think they're probably some of the best sort of dual-coloured lands we've ever had in Magic. I think the scry ability is just fantastic. A free scry is great, and for next turn to be able to fix your mana is fantastic. But then we have our poster boy, Polluted Delta. We don't have a 4-1 which we opened up because I sold that one, but I now have 3 copies of Polluted Delta. Pay 1 life, sack it, get a swamp or an island. Simple as that. Fetch lands are great, we all know they are. Fixes your mana if you need it, and also with Urborg out it can tap for a swamp. So you don't have to go and fetch a swamp. It's great to have though. I mean, I would potentially run 4. I don't really have the money at the moment to be able to get another one, but I would probably run 4. I probably wouldn't run 4 temples. I think 3 temples is fine. We'll move on to our basic lands, which is very, very simple. We have 7 swamp, including my cool altered one, which looks kind of cool with the foil Feeling of Dread, I think it is over there. And we have 8 islands, and that's it for the main deck, guys. So let's move on to our sideboard. Always a contentious point in decks, but always sort of matches up to your meta. It doesn't always dictate how the deck has to run or what you have to have in these decks. So, you know, make your sideboard tailored to your meta game, because mine's probably a lot different than what yours would be. So guys, we're going to finish off with our sideboard here in our blue-black control build. And we're going to look at one of my favourite cards in the entirety of the Khan's block, Singing Bellstrike. This thing is ridiculous. Whenever you play it, people just say, why are you playing that? And then realise, okay, this is kind of annoying now. Singing Bellstrike is fantastic against pretty much any creature apart from Rabblemaster, because Rabblemaster still gains value, but Singing Bellstrike is fantastic. Taps down a creature unless they pay 6 mana. It's really, really good. I've got it as a 2-of against very creature-heavy builds, against things that are going to struggle. I find it to be quite good against Black-White Warriors, especially with Arishin Foremost. You don't want that to be attacking and giving things double strike. And with Warriors not being a very mana-intensive deck, they don't often get to 6 mana before you can kill them. So Singing Bellstrike's great to bring in against Warriors, and also great to bring in against creature-heavy builds. It just works fantastically. Another card that's really, really good against those aggro builds is what I spoke about before, which I have the ultimate price in place of currently, is Drown in Sorrow. -2/-2 to all creatures, and you scry 1. Sorcery speed, if this was instant speed, it'd be absolutely busted, but you know, even though it's sorcery, fantastic card. Deals with Rabblemaster every single day of the week, and also getting a scry is nice. Let's move on to 2 Duress. Now, I tend to trade out a Thoughtseize for a Duress against control decks, just simply the fact that they're not going to be playing many creature spells. Sorry, so we're looking at non-creatures and non-lands and making them discard it. So it's essentially a Thoughtseize for free against control decks, which I like. We also have 3 negates in there for a very similar thing if we're playing against control decks or against decks with a lot of sort of tricksy things like, you know, Valorous Stance, which is a really, really annoying card. Negate's a really nice one to be able to do there, and also deals with the sieges, because black doesn't have many ways to deal with sieges, and nor does blue, because obviously enchantment removal is the, you know, black and blue's weakness. So negate's a really nice way to be able to deal with that. We've then got 2 Self-Inflicted Wounds, something I haven't actually ever sided in because I haven't really played Abzan too much, but basically target opponent sacrifices a green or white creature. If that player does, they lose 2 life. Nice way to deal with a Siege Rhino if that's the only thing they've got out, or a nice way to deal with an early Carotid if it's being annoying because it has hexproof, so it can slow people down. We've then got a copy of Perilous Vault, nice to bring in against, again, creature-heavy builds or sort of token strategies. Being able to exile all non-land permanents as well is a way to deal with enchantments, so I have sided this in against red decks that run Frontier Siege. Is it the red Frontier Siege? Whatever the red siege is, Perilous Vault to bring in against that is great. And Silumgar, the Drifting Death, so we have another Dragon Lord in there. And Silumgar is great, a 3/7 flying hexproof for 6 mana, biggest booty you'll ever see on a dragon. Whenever a dragon you control attacks, so that includes the other Dragon Lord Silumgar, includes your Icefall Regents, creatures defending player controls get -1/-1 until the end of turn. I might potentially run these instead of Prognostic Sphinx. I'm not sure. What do you guys think? I really like Silumgar just for the fact if you've got other dragons out and you are swinging, it can potentially be a board wipe one-sided, and also can deal with those pesky Rabble Masters and their tokens, which are a big prevalent thing in my metagame currently. So there we go, guys. There is the sideboard, there is the deck. What do you guys think? What would you change? Let me know. It works really well. I think the majority of the time I've gone either a 3-1 or a 2-2 with this at FNM. I didn't do very well yesterday. I went at 1-3 yesterday, simply for the fact that the draws in 2 of the games were absolutely appalling, and the opponent's decks was pretty good indeed. But there we go, guys. So there's the deck. I really hope you enjoyed this video. I've enjoyed making it. It's one of my favourite decks I've ever built. Thank you very much for watching, guys. Do leave a comment in the section below letting us know what you think of this deck, and in general just to say hello. That'd be great too. So guys, that's it for me, and I'll see you soon. Going to be vlogging at Game Day tomorrow and letting you guys know what's going on with the channel. Until then, guys, take care and see you soon. Thanks for watching this video from zlatanobojmtg.
If you enjoyed the video you just watched, please take a moment to press that subscribe button.
Leave a comment.
And give us a huge thumbs up.
Thanks guys, and we'll see you next time for more awesome MTG content.